Valetta is decidedly a lady with a past. But Valetta is a lady who's living very much in the present. And Valetta is looking forward to the future with confidence. At the end of the second millennium, it's worth remembering that the city of Valetta is a direct result of man's fear at the end of the first millennium. European Christians suddenly found it their religious, not to say economic, duty to return to the Holy Land. Because 1,000 years ago, the whole of Christendom was waiting for something, a miracle, or some unnamed disaster, the second coming of Christ, or the end of the world. Thus began the Crusades. The holy places had to be guarded against the non-believers, but those Christian holy places were also Jewish and Muslim holy places. And the world didn't end. Over the years, there were fewer and fewer pilgrims, and the Christian religious orders in the Holy Land were forced to move further and further away, mostly by the local Muslims who had been sorely provoked by the crusading Christians. One of them was the Order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. They'd been chased to Cyprus, then to the island of Rhodes, where they'd stayed for over 200 years, before being chased away again by the Turks, who, under Suleiman the Magnificent, were flexing expansionist muscles. With the threat of a holy war, Grandmaster Villiers de l'Isle-d'Adam asked Pope Clement VII for a new home for the order. The Pope turned to the Habsburg Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who was also ruler of Malta. The Turks were making a habit of sacking and pillaging the Maltese islands, where only the capital, the silent city of Mdina, seemed impregnable. An agreement was quickly reached. In 1530, the emperor accepted the nominal rent of 1 hunting falcon per annum, and the Knights of the Order agreed to garrison this last outpost of Christianity. The signs were good. Malta already had a long history of religious tolerance and integration, and in times of peace, there will be time to live in harmony again. But for the moment, there is the smell of war in the air. The Knights decided to make their capital in Birgu, one of the cities around the biggest natural harbor in Europe. They built auberge, or officers' messes, for the different nationalities, or langues, of the order. A new palace for the Inquisitor. The Grand Master established himself in the Castrum Maris, known today as Fort St. Angelo. And in 1552, they built Fort St. Elmo on the headland of Mount Chebaris, to protect the other side of the harbor. An aggressive new Grand Master, Jean Parisot de la Valette, was elected in 1557, and he started with renewed vigor to fortify the three cities of Birgu, Senglea, and Bormla. But time was running out. On the 18th of May, 1565, 138 Turkish galleys deposited 38,000 men and over 50 cannons. The first great siege of Malta was underway. Under the corsair Dragut Reis, they attacked Fort St. Elmo, expecting to overrun it in a matter of days or even hours, and thus ensure a safe anchorage for their fleet. They attacked from all sides, supported by continuous bombardment from their cannons on Mount Chabaris. But the 600 defenders held out for over a month and fought to the last man. On the 23rd of June, there was no one left to defend, and St. Elmo fell. But at what a cost? The Turks lost 8,000 men, including their commander, Dragut Reis. Suleiman then attacked Birgu. Even though he now had a safe anchorage, he surprised the defenders by attacking by land. De la Valette and what remained of his 600 knights and 9,000 men-at-arms refused to surrender, and the Turks were finally driven off on the 26th of August. With the arrival on the 7th of September of an expeditionary force sent by the Viceroy of Sicily, Suleiman and what was left of his fleet were driven away and back to Constantinople. He had lost 30,000 men. Grandmaster de la Valette had learned his lesson. Whoever commanded Mount Chabaris would almost certainly win any future battle. With the help of Italian military engineer Gabriele Serbelloni and architect Francesco Laparelli and his Maltese assistant Girolamo Cassar, La Valette laid the foundation stone of the new city on the 28th of March, 1566. Over the next few years, under Cassar's supervision, the magnificent fortress city of Valetta was built. But these magnificent ramparts and bastions were never put to the test. When the city was handed over to Bonaparte on the 12th of June, 1798, by Grandmaster Hompesch, there wasn't a shot fired in anger. However, 3 months later, the Maltese population had already started their insurrection. They begged help from Admiral Nelson and the British fleet. Lord Nelson obliged by blockading General Henri Vaubois and his 4,000 men inside the walled city. 2 years later, near to starvation, the French garrison surrendered. Bonaparte had taken away most of the Maltese treasures, and the British were invited to protect Malta. Thus began 160 years of an often uneasy love-hate relationship with the British Empire, and especially the British Armed Forces. An increasingly well-educated Maltese population was interested in more autonomy or even independence. But this was a question that would have to wait many years to be answered. Untouched by the European wars of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in World War II, Malta again found herself the last outpost against overwhelming odds. These massive walls and bastions, built after the first great siege, at last came into their own. Deep inside and below are the Lascaris war rooms, the underground operations center used by the commanders of Britain's armed forces. Italy declared war on the 11th of June 1940 and bombed Malta. Between then and the autumn of 1943, Valetta and the three cities suffered 2,500 air raids, 5,000 civilian casualties. Officers were on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, keeping track of all shipping and aircraft in the Mediterranean. In Lascaris war rooms are reconstructions of 6 momentous days during the period that the islands were under constant attack. But as you see, not only the military were underground. Down in Lascaris, the Allied commanders spent their final days and nights planning Operation Husky, the Allied attack on Sicily. Air Marshal Tedder, Admiral Cunningham, General Eisenhower, and General Alexander, who shared his room for a while with General Montgomery and Lord Louis Mountbatten. Faith. one of the three famous gladiators: faith, hope, and charity. And for poor Mr. Hitler, Malta was proving a real thorn in the flesh. 15th of April, 1942, a dispatch from His Majesty King George VI. To honor her brave people, I award the George Cross to the island fortress of Malta, to bear witness to a heroism and devotion that will long be famous in history. And a similar message came from the President of the United States.
When this war is won, as it surely will be, it must be one of our aims to work to establish a state of society where the advantages and privileges which hitherto have been enjoyed only by a few shall be far more widely shared by the many and by the youth of the nation as a whole.
Malta had been the most heavily bombed place on Earth, over 15 times the Coventry Blitz. Today, the war damage has been repaired, but as elsewhere in Malta, memories of the past are never very far away.
On the right-hand side, you know the GPS country. It is the smallest and last 15 march of Fifth Harbor. Ja, die Hörschornsteine hier hinter uns markiert das Glücks Krankenhaus. Und an der rechten Seite verstehen wir jetzt den...
There are only 4 of the old auberges left standing in Valetta. 2 of them are now unrecognizable. But Girolamo Cassar's Auberge of Castile and Leon is still resplendent, and now used as the offices of the Prime Minister. Just 2 minutes walk away, past the ruins of the Opera House, preserved as a memorial to the victims of the Blitz, is the Auberge de Provence, now the Museum of Archaeology. And 2 more minutes down Republic Street lead to St. John's Co-Cathedral, another of Cassar's projects, and its museum with national treasures that was salvaged from Bonaparte. In times of peace, tolerance is all. Three-quarters of Malta's population of over 360,000 live in and around Valetta and the 3 cities. All buses pass by City Gate.
We're happy tourists. La 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 la. Do 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 do. Beep 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 beep. La 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 do dee.
The Maltese, like most Southern Europeans, live a lot of their lives in the open air.
għanna għanzi nil-għawum, nitkelmu maħħom, nħedu għazdijom, u kelma wahda bissa.
Malta is a political democracy, producing a finely balanced two-party parliament.
Dan ġibila għaltaj deferek għadami li għazel.
And this is the building where Parliament sits, and where you may bump into the President of the Republic in one of the impressive corridors. Because it's also the Grand Master's Palace, designed by Girolamo Cassar, of course. On a hot summer's afternoon, what could be nicer than a stroll round the always cool state apartments with their paintings, and Gobelin tapestries, or perhaps the armory. But how in the world could you fight anybody dressed in 50 kilos or 110 pounds of metal? It's just as cool and quiet inside here. Gone are the days when the criers on the floor of stock exchanges risked life and limb, not to mention losing their voices. Today, stocks and shares are traded via computers. Malta has far more computers than one might imagine. There are computers in all primary school classrooms. And there are proportionally more people on the internet in Malta than in any other country in the world. And that's a fact. In Valetta, you'll find all the service industries you'd expect in an offshore banking center. When the Knights arrived in 1530, one of them wrote, "The water is salty and sedimentary. Drinking water comes from the rain, when there is any, which is preserved in cisterns and more frequently in ditches." And anyone who visited Malta before the mid-1980s would probably agree with him. But all that has changed. Malta now produces enough fresh drinking water for everyone, including over 1 million tourists that visit the islands each year. By a system of reverse osmosis, the fresh water that doesn't taste salty at all comes from seawater. Reverse osmosis could be a lifesaver for many communities around the world that have access to a water supply that up till now has been undrinkable. Valetta Harbor, just before dawn. The Maltese get up early when they go out for a day's international shopping in Catania, in Sicily. Of course, it helps if you're traveling on the fastest catamaran service in the world. 97 kilometers in 90 minutes. That's over 40 miles an hour. Valetta has good connections to the 21st century. With offshore oil, a free port, a dry dock and harbor, and a leisure craft system. And the sun and beaches are never more than a few minutes' drive away. Alongside the high-tech future, you still find many traditional skills. The Manual Theatre was built in 1731 for the pleasure of the knights. And when it opened on the 9th of January, 1732, the first performance was given by the knights themselves. Now the Maltese National Theatre, the Manual is the only Baroque theatre remaining in the world today, and the acoustics are world famous.
In Port Amsterdam, where the sailors all meet, there's a sailor who eats only fish heads and tails. He will show you his teeth and a rocket to do and a sword. And all the sails, and he yells to a boat, his arms open wide. Bring me more fish, put it down by my side. Then he runs over left, makes two holes and right. He gets up and back, and he
Maltese rabbit is a traditional main dish. This one is being prepared with a sauce made from oranges. and seafood is plentiful. And Maltese wines can be surprisingly good. Nightlife dates back to colonial days when the fleet was always in port. But nowadays, it's as important to the young Maltese as it is to the tourists. On weekends, you find youngsters in the streets until sunup. And there's a casino for those who have the time and money to spare.
Just hold the number and mark it here. Say just 2 black.
Malta is 98% Catholic, and every town and village has its own Saints' Day and festival. But Carnival is enjoyed by the whole population. After the heat of the day, when only mad dogs and Englishmen and women go out in the midday sun, the Maltese pick up the threads of their social lives in the evening, in the streets and squares. Valetta and the 3 cities. Yesterday is history, but history is still with us today. And tomorrow? Tomorrow's looking good.